Surprise, buttface!
Void Bastards. What a cracking name for a game. I had no clue existed until a few days ago. Now if Red Dwarf Enter the Gungeon and Borderlands had a baby, I think it would look a lot like Void Bastards. It's not perfect, but this roguelite in space has made its maiden voyage and I seem to have been swept along for the ride. Cheers to the developers for the review copy. I'm Mark Walker. Are we looking at the event horizon or another black hole? Let's find out. As with most roguelites, it's a touch light on the story. You're flung into the space boots of a convict serving out his sentence, working for an unknown agency. A small backpack-like device surgically attached to your spine and allowing you all manner of huddy goodness chatters away in your ear. The Steve waits patiently at the airlock as you're given your first task. Find all the parts you need to create X item, and X turns out to be a fake ID to begin with. But when that plan goes lids up, you then have to build the machine to read the card and so on and so forth. Essentially, the story is a giant fetch quest to begin with, but one which serves to ground the core gameplay with some semblance of purpose. Now thankfully, the game has a great way of telling story, and that's through beautifully illustrated comic book panels. These are hilariously well written, and where the game sets its mood nicely. All you need to know is you're one of hundreds and hundreds of hapless fools tasked with completing these goals, and if you fail, i.e. die, they have many others just waiting in the wings to take up the baton of space-based idiocy. Man, that was tough to say. There have been a number of games which attempt to fuse genres. We've even seen a couple combine first-person shooting and roguelite already on the Nintendo Switch, but for me they lacked any lasting appeal. Usually you're given a goal of go to floor X and room Y and then invariably die as you try and progress through the different floors, at which point you'd have to go all the way back to the beginning. What Void Bastards does well though is give the player continuity. When you begin the game, you're given a random citizen with his own unique identity, name, look and characteristics. Now unfortunately my useless meat sack was a heavy smoker. This meant he would cough at the most inopportune of times, sending groups of enemies, known as citizens, flooding towards me.
Where's he got to? That nugget better not be making more work for me. Hey!
You have no control over these initial quirks, but you do later get the option to remove and even change some of them. Control is my first slightly contentious area. Now with a pro controller you'll have no issue aiming and shooting the various different upgradable weapons. What you will instantly do though, if you're like me, is dig through the options in the vain hope of finding gyroscopic controls. Unfortunately, they're just not there. A slight missed opportunity in my book. Now the default setup is quite similar to what you'd be accustomed with, something like Call of Duty. You can shift through the available weapons with the R bumpers, which you can choose before boarding a found vessel, and the enemies, known as the citizens as I mentioned, will have unique ways with which you can take them down while avoiding damage, much as with your Binding of Isaacs and your Gungeons. Weapons are fully upgradable and they range from your trusty pistol-like default weapon, Dead Space fans unite, shotguns and others, all the way to explosives and my current favourite, a cute little cat that lures enemies in and then explodes their face off. Awesome. There's no aiming down the sights and your accuracy and ability to wield these weapons can be modified as you grow, in air quotes, your character. Some enemies will need to be stunned before they can be killed, while others you'll just have to give a wide berth to if you want to survive early on. There's a surprising opportunity to play the game quite stealthily, with enemies able to hear and travel to disturbances, but also the player can shut and lock doors. This allows for the unarmed spaceman to still be smart enough to loot a ship without firing a single round. I wasn't that spaceman, no siree. But it's nice to know that you can be, with footsteps on different surfaces causing different levels of sound and movement speed also being taken into account. Your ship is shown on the star map, its position shown in relation to others in the area. Now in the first hour of the game, you'll likely be checking which ships have enough food, fuel and ammo, but which also don't pose too much of a threat as indicated by the different enemy type panels here, and then heading aboard to loot them. You must ensure you have enough of these precious resources or you'll find that your journey will come to a deadly end rather sharpish. There's a real balancing act, with things like your food being consumed to heal you but also not wanting to run out. Now here's exactly how you're going to be doing that. It usually goes something like this. You dock the ship and check your map. You're going to want to head to the helm as soon as you can, as from here you can download all the ship's information. This will show you where all the loot's at. Much like Borderlands, any lootable items in the world are shown with a fluorescent green. Now, some ships might have power out when you arrive, meaning a trip planned to the reactor to restart that is essential. Depending on the type of enemies present, once you've reached the helm and downloaded the plans, you'll then be thinking about two things. Primarily, how long have I got before my oxygen runs out and I'm clutching my throat doing the Arnold Schwarzenegger Total Recall Mars dance? And what exactly did I come here for? Now, 9 times out of 10, you'll have earmarked a specific piece of gear with the handy locator tool that you can craft early on, which will allow you to see ships with the items you need to build certain things. Then it's a case of getting to that item as the priority while filling your boots with just about any trinkets you can find before you die of asphyxiation or get shot. Sounds bloody fantastic, doesn't it? And my word, is it compelling. The sound of oxygen saturation is at critical levels, and sprinting from one end of a packed out ship to the other, dodging spectres and exploding slimes, to just slam a new cylinder into that oxygen system on your back is as exciting as it sounds. Now, another key component to the game, and which gives it the risk-reward loveliness this genre is so well known for, are the merit points. These are usually acquired through killing of enemies and looting, and allow you to unlock certain higher value areas and items, usually giving an important piece of salvage to be used on a major character upgrade. Not only this, but merit points are the currency used to purchase ammo and items at the different star shops and vending machines. That currency is important in a few ways, and its acquisition becomes a side activity in itself. Some ships you come across may have particularly meritorious citizens aboard, usually a much tougher lot with the potential for an even more nails boss enemy who can take a shoo-in. There's a touch of Bioshock about some of them, with the larger ones being a nightmare to take down and best avoided early, but whom will invariably be on these higher value frigates. Risk and reward. There are a number of upgrades as well, much like items in Isaac, that will persist on your character for the duration of each run. These gene splicing changes are found on some ships and can remove negative traits such as my aforementioned smoker's cough, but also can add substantially beneficial abilities. The best I've found was this Sixth Sense perk, which means I can see where all the enemies are on my minimap. It's really helpful. Now, when and if you die, and you may die, I didn't yet, your character is dead. Any mutations you have had applied to them are gone. However, here is where the game's quite forgiving in one sense. Any gear or items that you've built will persist, plus the new character you get might have a beneficial genetic quality, a lot like the inherited trait system from Rogue Legacy. There's no escaping that the more you play, the more you'll experience repetition, but for the 10 or so hours I've played so far, I've really enjoyed that core loop. Plus, I'm a sucker for space, and the comedic, stylish presentation here has me very engaged from the get-go. There are a number of mechanics, such as your ship weapons that can be purchased, and fighting off pirates in the overmap or outrunning them, minefields, loot sites, black holes, random character upgrades, and numerous hidden things I've probably not even discovered yet. It's not the game I thought it would be, but it's one that I'm really enjoying. Heck, you can go for a tea break that gives you triple damage if you're willing to spend some of those merits. Glorious. Gyro would have been nice, though I know that's not really for everyone anyway. It doesn't detract too much from the overall controls. For me, gameplay scores 17 out of 20 and controls 16 out of 20. Okay, let's get right to it with the visuals. I love the style, but I loathe some of the choices they've made. Firstly, let's look at performance. They've uncapped the frame rate, and here's why I think they've done it. Now, for the vast majority of the time, it's above 30 frames per second, probably averaging 35 to 40, but in larger areas it can dip sometimes down to 25, and if an explosion goes off, it might even tank further. It's very smooth for the most part, but you do notice those dips. I think they uncapped it due to it being a first-person shooter. Back when I had a PC, you'd do that because, well, one, your graphics card wasn't very good, but when VSync's on, vertical synchronization, to tie the frame rate to the refresh rate and or cap the frame rate to 30, it's not necessarily the actual performance, but the amount of input lag that you get. This increases when you have VSync on, and it may potentially be one reason they didn't cap the frame rate, but still, in all honesty, they should have. The trade-off though is the inconsistency, but also the tearing Screen tearing occurs mainly due to the frames coming quicker or slower than the refresh rate of the screen. Now when you lock it, you tend to reduce or eliminate screen tearing. As such, there are quite a few noticeable screen tears here, which is just annoying really, where the top and the bottom of the screen just misalign for a moment. I would suggest the developers work a little more on optimization and lock that frame rate to 30. Even if it does add a tiny bit of input lag, this game doesn't really require huge amounts of precision. And when you look at the 60 frames per second silky smooth PC version, it's just, yeah, it's not great. Now the art style itself I really like. I think they nailed the look they were going for. I love how bold and punchy everything looks, and the very stylized, almost sprite look of the enemies is very cool. Top for me is the audio though. The abuse and sarcastic detritus that seeps from the mouths of the citizens is pure gold. You can hear them through doors walking around or talking about you or things that they're doing. It's hilarious. The accents and voice acting sound like something from a David Firth animation. If you've ever seen Salad Fingers, you'll know what I'm talking about. Sound effects, and in particular the different ship computers, alerts and weapon noises, are spot on. Now some of the music is really quite odd, with some stabbing jazz riffs and weird synth moments when enemies die. The strangest thing though is how well it all fits together. Due in part to the randomly generated ships comprised of handcrafted modular sections rather than total randomness, there will invariably be repetition, but I tended to be impressed overall. Visuals and performance score 14 out of 20 mainly because of the poor choice of having an uncapped frame rate and the sudden drops in performance you get. The style's lovely. Audio's very unique and I liked it. The voice actors do a great job. 18 out of 20. Now the game is going to set you back no small fee at £25 or your regional equivalent, and it's going to take you around 15 to 20 hours to finish, so it's not a short game. I really like it, but I can't help but feel that it's just a tiny bit steep on its opening offer. When you don't launch with a discount, you tend to just disappear on the eShop, which is a shame as Nintendo stubbornly refused to make anything close to usable with the eShop. And that would be a shame, because it's a game that I think the vast majority of people will absolutely love despite a few flaws. You know how some games just work? They nail the things they want to nail. This is exactly like that. The feeling of going on these raids in the enemy ships, the planning of new gear and the shooting, all of it's good and it just feels very Moorish. The price is the same wherever you buy it, and having this portable is perfect in my book. Overall I give value 15 out of 20. There's tons of fun to be had. It would be absolutely amazing with multiplayer. Man, that would be great. Developers, I hope you're listening.
Do try not to die while action items remain unticked.
So there we have it, a game I've really thoroughly enjoyed, and one that it doesn't happen very often, one that I'll actually be playing a lot of after review because it's so addictive. Smoke me a kipper, I'll be back for breakfast. Void Bastards scores 80%. Big thanks to all of you who enjoyed the channel. Please stick around if you like what you've seen. Leave a comment down below, and a big thanks to our patrons who support us each and every month. You know what's coming. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya! Whoa, that was an extreme one, wasn't it?
Biscuits revolt!
Come here so I can give you a hug.
For synergizing.
Action items ticked.